This is the rotary engine that I modeled in Desmos, and it's a project that I've been working on throughout my 11th grade year. This is actually a part of my IB extended essay in mathematics, and in it I'll be discussing some of the properties of the rotary engine, as well as how I found the area maximizing rotor size. Alright, now let's get rid of all the fancy metal housing around the engine and take a closer look at the rotor and its housing itself. The housing of a rotary engine is a shape called the peritrochoid, which is this red line you see around it. And now let's see where it all began with the gears. So this is how everything started. I modeled two gears, the first one with a polar coordinate and the second one with a parametric equation, because it's actually quite hard to, well, when I say quite hard, I'm not sure if it's possible in Desmos to move these polar coordinates about like this. So I used the parametric equation to sort of have this rotating motion around this central gear. Now what's crucial about this is that the gear ratio between the two gears has to be 2 to 3. And as you can see, the larger gear has 36 gears, while the smaller gear only has 24. And now we can add the inner housing of this rotor, and this blob shape is actually called a peritrochoid, and it's a shape that the rotary engine spins in. Now what's interesting is if you change some of the parameters like n from 1/3 to 1/4, you get a completely different peritrochoid. And this shape is actually ideal for a square to spin in. So imagine a rotary engine, but except the rotor is not a triangle, but a square. And similarly, if you put 1/5, this shape will actually be ideal for a pentagon to spin in. Really cool stuff. Now let's change it back to 1/3. Now the R and E here changes some more properties of this peritrochoid, which I'll be talking about more in depth in my extended essay. Alright, so now we have the central gears and the housing, so where do we go next? Well, I wanted to start with something simple, something that I can build up upon in the future. So I programmed these basic triangular motors that moves just in the same way as a rotary engine. However, as you can see, the edges are all straight lines forming an equilateral triangle. Now I used a parametric equation with some restrictions to form these lines. And actually these three lines are essentially the same, just with different starting points. However, if this rotor was to be built in real life, it would be terribly inefficient, since the efficiency of the rotary engine is only maximized when the compression ratio is maximized. And to do that, you want to have the largest rotor possible. Now obviously, this is not the largest possible rotor. And if we slow it down here, there are a lot of empty area here that can be filled with more rotor areas. But obviously you can't fill the entire area with it because then you cannot rotate it. And now the logical next step I thought would be to fill this area with a simple circular arc. So a circle that makes contact with these 2 points, but also this point over here. And after some modeling, this is what I came up with. A rotor with circular arcs. To make this, I just used regular circle equations and make it move about around the center. And what's interesting about this is that it's not actually rotating around a certain axis, because the axis is always changing. So the equations I had to put in was actually quite interesting, and I'll put the link down in the description so you can have a look if you're interested. And obviously this does a much better job at filling the space than the regular equilateral triangles. However, I noticed that if you zoom in, there is still some space that doesn't get used throughout the entire rotation. So it must mean you can increase the rotor size just a bit more, right? And as it turns out, after I've done some research, yes, I can actually improve this. And what better sources can you get than the book written by the man who popularized the rotary engine, Kenichi Yamamoto. In his book, cleverly named the rotary engine, I came across something interesting. In this diagram, figure 2.5, you can see he described the area maximizing rotor size. And incredibly, this is formed by another paratrachoid. This paratrachoid looks like this. And if you take a closer look at these loop-de-loops, you'll find that, intriguingly, the intersection of these three lobes form a shape that's kind of similar to a rotor. So, obviously, I transported those equations here into some parametric equations and made them spin using what I can only call black magic, because, to be frank, I have no idea how I did those. And it'll be fun having to recall them for my actual extended essay. But anyways, if we let it appear now, whoa, you see it's larger than the original circular arc, but still, it doesn't cross the paratrachoid housing. You see it sort of glides perfectly along the housing, and if I just slow it down a bit, you can truly admire how majestic this motion is. Take a look at this. It's perfect everywhere. So there you go, I finished modeling and it's time to work on my extended essay, right? No, because I like to overdo stuff. I decided to add a slider to control the RPM of this engine. So you can go slow and then... Ooh. If you're wondering how I did this, I feel like I actually outsmarted Desmos a bit. I'm quite proud of that. So, annoyingly, there's actually no function that allows you to change the speed of animation in Desmos. However, I noticed that if you change the difference of value between these sliders, you can actually increase the speed of the animation, since the slider always moves at the same speed. So, originally this was set at 6 pi, which is enough for the rotor to rotate an entire rotation. So what I did was, I connected this slider to the variable b, as you can see here, and then I multiplied 6 pi by the floor of b, because obviously I don't want for it to not be a multiple of 6 pi, otherwise the animation would cut halfway through a rotation and then start back in the original position again, and it wouldn't look smooth. So by doing that, I essentially made a slider control the speed of the animation. What's a bit disappointing is that it's not a smooth increase. It actually increases by step due to the floor function. But you know, with 50 different speed to choose from, it's not that noticeable, honestly. And then, since I use the variable a to program all of the rotating rotors originally, I have to sort of undo this step by using a modular function. So what this does is it basically divides c by 6 pi and takes a remainder. And this allows everything to work normally without being impacted by the added variables. Next comes probably my favorite part of this model, and as I'm sure you noticed in the intro, I added sound. So I used this new tone functions, I have actually no idea that they existed before this, and programmed them with the variable b. So the part in front of the comma represents a frequency or pitch, and the part after it just describes how loud it is. So here it goes. Now, I'm not actually that satisfied with how this rotor sounds in the high RPM range. It just sounds a bit dull, and I don't know, it doesn't sound very good. What I might do in the future is I might do a Fourier analysis of an actual rotary engine, and I can see how each distinct frequency is a part of the final note. However, one thing I'm really enjoying is how I managed to make the rotary rap. this idle noise is obviously iconic in all the rotary engines, especially the 13B, and yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, now after this, I spent the night adding some decoration to this and made a housing to make it look more like an actual rotary engine. And this is it. I mean, I can't be more proud of this thing. I'm super happy that I got the time to work on this over the past year, and it's been a really enriching and fulfilling process. Now it's actually time for me to start writing the extended essay, so let's see how it goes. Hopefully it's decent. Thank you very much if you made it this far into the video. And there's one more thing that I want to get finished in the summer, and it's something that I've been working on for a very long time. And let's just say it has something to do with my art desk over there. On a bit of a more personal note, the next few months will be quite crazy for me with extended essays, IAs, and college applications, of course. So let's just see how many videos I can manage to record throughout this time. But I will definitely be back after that. Bye.